Hey there everyone and welcome back to the React.js training. So let's get started. So now you know quite a lot of things about the props. Let's go ahead and it's a good time to move into the props. So we have got exactly the same situation there. Now I want you to understand a few things before we move on to the state. Let's just say this is a component. I'm a car component. So imagine when this component was about to be loaded, there is a lot of things that you can do. Like for example, there will be an instance when this component was just about to be loaded, or maybe has just loaded, or maybe you're moving on to some another page, or maybe you have done something on the page for which it's about to be disappear. So there is a lot of things that you can do, and that is actually the component life cycle. Like for example, you might want to check whether this page should be loaded or not, or how this page should be loaded. So there's a lot of things you can do, and this is known as the state. Right now we are going to discuss one of them, which is the set state. So we are going to just set the state based on doing some action. So let's just figure out what we want to do. Now in this parent component, we have got just some info. So what I want to do is when somebody clicks on this heading, just some info, I want to do some updates in this component. So this is displaying me some items like ID and everything. First of all, I would like to get these items into simply on a horizontal manner, not the horizontal, actually the vertical manner. And when somebody clicks on just some info, I want it to be displayed in the reverse order. Okay, no big deal. So for this, first of all, I'll get rid of this P and I'll convert this into a division because I will be doing some things to this return. And it's not a good idea to have P inside the P's. Okay, so I'll return, and what am I about to be returned in this case? Now returning is pretty simple, and let me just try to, okay, so how I can just pull off this. So let's just have a paragraph there. Okay, delete this, and we are having a paragraph. We are gonna close the paragraph, and it has automatically done things for me. Okay, there we go. And all I want to do in this is item. Oops, there we go. Now it's gonna display this in this order, but it's still complaining. Now this is kind of a common production error. It is, although right now displaying everything, but if you're going to produce your app onto Heroku or something, it's going to give you a lot of errors. Let me show you what that errors are. If I go into the inspect and console, it says, hey, let me zoom in there. It says each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. So notice it's saying in the quotes key. This is not sarcastic way. It is actually key. So how we can follow that up? Now all you have to do whenever you are iterating and whatever the element that you are creating, make sure you pass on a key there, put an equal sign there. And now in the key, what you have to do in the pair of curly braces, there we go. All you have to do is pass on this. So this item is actually responsible for iterating over every element, but this I is actually the unique index there. So we can use this. So get that I, and notice the error is gone now. A very common production error. So we have now figured that out. Now let's go into this parent component, because just like you have seen the default props, we are going to talk about the state and the default state as well. So where do you actually create your default state? Simple answer, in the constructor. Why? Because if you remember from the object-oriented paradigm, whenever the class is being invoked, or maybe an object is being created in the class, or whenever the class is being used, the very first thing that is being triggered is the constructor. So that's a good idea. So let's go in here, just above the render, type in RCON and hit the tab key. There you go. Your constructor is ready to rock and roll. Let's just quickly understand what this constructor is doing. It's simply calling the super, which is super important. Whenever you call the constructor, just write the super keyword. And here, this dot state, this is actually literally used to set the default state. Just like in the properties, we use default props. In the state, we use this dot state from the constructor to pass on some values. Okay, that is good. But how do we go actually there? Now, since this is an object, you can have key value pairs. Like in this case, I'll just pass on exactly the same values, copy that and paste that. So now our state is having those values. But the problem is now it's not going to affect anything in here, because still we are using this dot props, and it doesn't really make sense. If you are having a state, then obviously for this example, I'll be going for the state. So just like you access the props, you are gonna use the state. Now, although the data is same in this case, which I should modify, so let's just make this as, I'll keep that as a cars, because the cars from the prop and everything, but I'll change the name of the cars in here. So I'll call this as, what should I call this? I'll call this as, let's just call this AA, or state for the state. Let's just go with the S-BMW for the state, S-Merc. I know this doesn't make much sense, but this is how we are differentiating the things. So save this and notice, since we are getting everything from the state this time and everything is good. But notice one more important thing in here, that our child component is completely unaware of whether we are doing it in the parent component with the state or props. It doesn't really matter to him. All it says, hey, I'm going to get somehow the cool car, which is going to set into the properties, and I'm going to just work on it. Now, this is where actually the React shines. Your component is so much into a sandbox that it doesn't really matter. No matter what you do to the parent component, it's completely independent, and all it cares is about whatever it's going to come in here. I'm going to just print that out or just display on the screen. So that's one good thing. Now let's carry on to our things that we want to do is, now, everything is good so far, but we haven't done any kind of setting the state or triggering any event. So what we want to do is go into this H3 or H2 in this case, just some info, and I want to trigger some event on click. So you might have heard about this on click quite a lot. And inside the pair of parentheses, what should I call? Let's just call this as this dot handle click. Okay. Now, this is a method I'm gonna call up, but since this method doesn't exist, first of all, I need to actually create this method. So where can I create? Now, you can create your methods anywhere. I like to create them in here just after the constructor. So I'll be creating this pair of parentheses. My definition goes here. No big deal. But there is one syntax trigger or syntactical sugar that you have to do. You have to bind this as well. Now, one good point of binding the things is inside the constructor, but I'll show you another way or another common point where people like to bind this. How you bind your method. This is a syntactic sugar that you have to always go. Now, this dot handle click equals this dot handle click dot bind. And then in the pair of parentheses, it takes a parameter this. Now, this is one way of binding the things, but many times you will see that people just bind it on the go, like just dot bind and pairing this. Completely okay, completely fine. Just choose one of them. In this case, we are just choosing this guy. Okay. I saved this. This doesn't gives me any error, but it's not gonna work because we haven't handled the click yet. Now, how we want to handle the click? Now, in this case, we don't want to do much, but we want to use one method of the state, which is set state, how we want to change the things in here. Now, all we have to do is simply say this dot a pre-built method set state. Now, there are a lot of methods like set state and or set state and all of that, which we'll discuss quite a lot in detail later on. But right now, what we want to do is we want to access the object. Now, how we can do that? All you have to do, surprisingly, is just simply say cars, colon, and whatever you want to store in that car. Now, in this case, I just want to reverse them. So I'm going to access this by using this dot state. So I have accessed all the objects in that, and I will simply say dot cars. So now I have accessed all the objects from this dot state, and all I want to do is dot reverse. Okay, that's a built-in method. Okay, this is good. So far good, no big deal there. Now save this and let's just first see what we have done, and then I'll quickly revise that again. So when I click on just some info, notice the things are moving in here. All they are doing is just reversing the order. On to a quick note, let me show you what I did quickly because I did a lot of things in here. First of all, I called up a constructor in here because I want to define a state or initial state for my variables or my objects. Okay, I did that. After that, I changed my parent element with this dot state because I don't want to use props now. I want to pass on everything from the props. I actually changed it in here. So instead of props, I have changed it in here. Okay, now I wanted to trigger some event. So I have called on click on H2. You can call it anything. On input, maybe some input is being failed, or a lot of things you can do. And on that, what function I need to call? This guy. And what this function do? Simply it accesses the cars there, and it realigns the value by dot reverse. So simple things, but very, very good properties. And I think this is one of the best examples slowly put down in front of you so that you can understand what actually state is and what actually the props are. I know for a lot of people, this is a lot of confusing topic, but with these videos you have seen, it was so much easier to understand what the state and what the props is. But again, I would say one thing to all of you, that there are a lot of things that you understand while working with the projects. So a lot of things will surely get clear up more in a much more wider manner when you will work along with me with the project. So right now, have patience. Whatever you have grabs in your mind, it's completely okay, and just carry on and move forward.